Welcome back to Counterculture. You are still the one and only Pastor Mark. I am still Andy.
Yep.
That's fantastic.
Yep.
Some days we actually trade for a second. It doesn't go so
like,
well.
nah, let's go back to the way we were.
Yeah, you are irreplaceable.
You do have horses, though. I don't.
I do have horses. And it's going to be winter, where the time of the year where you're like, oh, maybe somebody
Why do I
should
have
take
horses?
that. Right, but it's been beautiful. We are in November. It's been 70 degrees.
Yeah.
We're not complaining.
Beautiful October here in Western New York. It was awesome.
Last week we talked a little bit about Daniel.
Yes.
I want to go back to Daniel chapter 6, right? You read the verses last week, but I want you to read the verses 4 or 5 again for me today.
At this, the administrators and the satraps tried to find grounds for charges against Daniel in his conduct of government affairs, but they were unable to do so. They could find no corruption in him because he was trustworthy and neither corrupt nor negligent. Finally, these men said, "We will never find any basis for charges against this man, Daniel, unless it is something to do with the law of his God."
So we live in this culture that is super big on separation of church and state, right? And yet we see in this story how the two things really play together, right? Daniel, in the secular world, right, running the kingdom, people couldn't find anything against him, right? It's not talking about necessarily the spirit world, not talking about Christianity, even though those two things are together with Daniel. It is talking about day-to-day stuff in the workplace. I wonder today, right, first of all, in the least judgmental way possible, right? I wonder in our congregations how many people that we could really say that about, right? Like, hey, in their workplace, they're just honorable. They're doing things just right. Nothing to do with, are they telling people about Jesus? Are they being a good evangelist? But just in their workplace, are they being honorable? Do you think in our culture today that the majority of people doing work today are incorruptible? Right? They're just really doing things right and well in their job overall, let alone can't find anything about them. But overall, are they really trying to do the job to the best of their ability?
I would say yes. There are some people out there doing that. Mm-hmm. I have where we live, we have Wegmans, and one of the things I've always appreciated about Wegmans when I have gone in is their employees they're good employees. They're just good employees. The young ones, they're respectful. They work hard, from what I can tell. And I don't know whether Wegmans just is good pickers or what, but we've gone to Arby's in where we live, and they always have good workers. And I've always tried to make a point of complimenting, and Wegmans, you can put their name in a box or something, and they get employee of the month or something, whatever. And when I see that, I try to do that, and I also tell them. Matter of fact, a few weeks ago, I left here and I had gone to Burger King, and there was a young gal at the taking orders and stuff, and she just brightened the whole place up.
Yeah.
And I told her so, and then I told the manager. She was, make sure you tell her. I said, I have told her. I said, I just want to make sure because you need to keep this girl, as long as you can. There are people that just enjoy their work, and it was interesting. One of the means of grace that John Wesley talked about was had to do with the idea of seeking God in all situations. And we talked about practicing the presence of God.
Yep.
Brother Lawrence. Brother Lawrence was a monk and spent most of his monkery time monkeying around. Oh, I just thought of that one.
Did you see that?
I know. Monkeying around At the monastery in the kitchen, if I remember correctly, and mopping floors, cleaning floors, peeling potatoes, the whole nine yards. That was pretty much his monk career.
His existence.
His existence. And yet he writes, I don't know that he intended it to become a book, but centuries later, he's still making an impact because he said, find God in whatever you're doing. Find God. We get above our reason. And leadership, we forget, especially in the church, is servant leadership. I was talking to someone recently, and they were telling me about, I was at a church, and the pastor, they had all these people out working in the yard, getting it all cleaned up, and he's standing there with his arms crossed. Now, I don't know about you, but I was taught, you get in there and help. You don't ask people to do things you're not willing to do yourself. And in Japan, CEOs clean toilets.
Yep.
Because it's like they want to remember where they came from, where you started. But we come into this, I'm entitled. I'm entitled to this position or that position, or I've been doing this. Why was I passed over? And that happens sometimes. And sometimes you got to say, okay, I'm not appreciated here, God. What I do? It's always interesting to me how people in the secular world could say, well, I'm just not appreciated. I'm going to go. But if a pastor said that, they'd be like, well, he's just in it for the money. Oh yeah, that's what we're in it for. All right. It's the retirement plan we're into because it's out of this world.
Yeah.
But
thank you, Jesus.
Yeah. But to go in, our responsibility is to go in and be the best. To whatever you do, whether it's whatever you work at, whatever it is, work at it with all your heart as unto the Lord and not unto man. If the Lord He's called us to be good employees. It's very interesting to me back in the day when Saddam Hussein was, the head gazook in Iran, whatever it was, or Iraq, I guess it was. That's my dad word, a head gazook, whatever that is. And the dictator, whatever he was, I remember hearing somewhere that he liked having Christians working in his palaces.
Yep.
Because he trusted them.
Yep.
He knew they were going to do their job. They were diligent. They were not going to be bad employees because they work at it with all your heart as unto the Lord. And yet how many of us go in and, I want this, I want that, whatever, instead of just letting God. And how nice it is when someone you're rewarded as opposed to going in and begging and making demands and stuff.
Sure.
There's something rewarding for it, that your work has been seen. And it was just Pastor Appreciation Month, the Clergy Appreciation Month. And, I try to remind laymen when I run in from other churches, hey, make sure you appreciate your pastor. My church is always very good about that. And, you need that little boost sometimes. And
helps
to get that helps immensely. Yeah.
So I would agree with you that most people that I know, they do try to do their job, their work job, to the best of their ability and do it in such a way that they can be promoted and all those things. So then the harder question is, okay, do you think that within the church people have that same work ethic? Do you think that the average person, the majority of people, are working just as hard at their relationship with Jesus as they are with their relationship at work?
Well, let's take it also what they do at church.
Sure.
Well, if I'm not going to get recognition, why would I do it? Because it needs to be done, and you say this is your church, and the Lord's asked you to do it. You just do it.
So is it easier to work unto the Lord in the secular workplace or in the church for most people, do you think?
Well, since I think many Christians compartmentalize their faith, I only got to be a Christian at church. Or it's like the pastor's kid said one day, he goes, hey, Dad, why don't you be a creep at church and be nice at home for once, There's an indictment. I heard that from Timothy too. But no, I'm just joking.
It's just true.
It's just true. The bottom line, it shouldn't matter.
Should be the same. Right?
It should be the same.
They should be one and the same, yes. But they're not.
It is the context does not matter as much as our content.
Sadly, I think that most people are putting more effort into being who they're supposed to be at work than they are being who they're supposed to be in the church.
Yeah. It was funny. I saw it on Instagram, and pastor friend of mine put it on his YouTube before I did, but it was talking about the difference between how Christians are at work and how they are at church. They wouldn't think of being late for work, but they have no problem being late at church. They wouldn't think of you screaming or yelling at their criticizing their boss, but they have no problem criticizing their pastor.
They wouldn't think about agreeing to do something at work and then not doing it.
Yeah, right, yeah. Or saying, oh yeah, can you stay? If they get asked to do something, they'll just either do it or, we do it here at the church. Well, yeah, I can't do that, Pastor. I'm too busy or whatever. Yeah. Can you come in and work this weekend? Oh yeah, I can. But hey, could you do this little thing? No, I can't do that.
So here's the ending hard question, right?
Yeah.
Again, do you think that most people, right, that most people that are claiming to be a Christian on Sunday, going to church on Sunday, do you think that in their workplace on Monday, do you think the same concept that you just read for Daniel would be true for them? Do you think people are looking at them and going, hey, listen, we can't get them on anything in the actual work ethic. We're only going to be able to get them on something that has to do with their God, right? Which means that people have to actually know that you have a relationship with God, right? So for the average person going to work today, is it possible that people know that they're a Christian and would say like, hey, the only way we're going to get this person is if we do something about their God? Do most people live a lifestyle at work in such a way that would even be a possibility, that people would know about their God?
I would hope so.
But do you think it is? On the record.
Not always. To ask that question that way is a generalized question. And when you label, you don't
all
know.
Or none.
Yeah, all or none.
This is why I was
does it
majority.
Happen? Yeah. Many do. Many do not. I cringe sometimes when I hear professional athletes mic'd up, and this usually happens in the NFL, and they are known to be a Christian, and they are mic'd up dropping F-bombs right and left. Not because they're mad, but just because part of
that's what they do.
That's what they do. And I will be honest with you, I pray for professional athletes and entertainers. Lord, let them have a good witness and use their platform well. Mm-hmm. And then you have the ones that you can tell they're not obnoxious, but they're bold in their faith, and I want to serve the Lord. I want to glorify God. I think that needs to be our first and foremost, because as I often say, that school teacher that Christian maybe they're a school teacher. They're a Christian skillfully disguised as a school teacher.
Right.
The big thing, with one of the tenets of Christian nationalism is, they want prayer in schools. Let me tell you something. I don't think that it should be required. I think it should be allowed. And if you don't want to participate, you don't have to participate. But you know what? As a Christian teacher, coach, janitor, lineman at a factory, I hope you're praying. I worked in a hospital when I was in college. I remember standing there. I was in the laundry room. One year I worked in the dirty end, which was not fun, and the other time I worked in the clean end. And I can remember we would stack washcloths.
Yep.
And there's only one way to do it, is to stand there and stack. It was very mundane work. And I remember just thinking, this is so, Lord, how is this even glorifying you? And I remember one day I'd put stuff on the cart to go up. We would load the carts up, and for some reason, the CEO walked through and he looked at the carts. He goes, "Those are the neatest carts I've ever seen." And one of my coworkers said, "He does it," because I was a neat freak. He does it, and I didn't get any recognition, but it was nice to have that and say. But was it more important? I represented God in that.
Exactly.
To do that.
And mundane.
I never said anything, but in those times that I was standing there stacking, I was praying. Hannah, wasn't it Hannah? He saw her lips moving, but
thought she was drunk.
He saw she was drunk, but she was praying. There's some, and here I have always told my churches when I go into them, Andrew, well, Pastor, he's going to come in, he's going to go to church. I'm saying, you know what? I'm going to spend these first 3 years getting to know you.
Yeah. With
The
people.
next 3 years trying to meet new people outside the church, and the next 3 years getting you out of here who need to get out of here. No, I'm just joking on that. But you have access to places and people that I do not.
Yep.
And your job is to go in there and you build a relationship with them. And when you get them here, yes, I'll do what I can to do that. And I'm going to go out and try and build some relationships with people. But do not think that I'm here and I'm going to bring those people. He hasn't brought in my coworkers because I can't go talk to your coworkers because
I don't have 8 hours.
I don't have, and I may not get to go in there and be on the line, and they don't want me in there because you're going to be stopping them from work or whatever. So the responsibility for all of us, no matter what it is to represent Christ where we're at.
I mean, so I would think this whole thing is just so fascinating because Daniel, these guys are out to get him. They can't get him in the work, so they get him in who he is.
Yes.
Right? That's what we have to do. And we're to live our lives like that. We're to live our lives in such a way that hopefully people, right? People,
if you were convicted of being a Christian, would there be enough evidence?
Exactly, right? Exactly. And that's where we want to be.
Absolutely.
It's where we want to encourage our people to be. And that's actually what our job is even through counterculture and chasing the wind and all the things, is to encourage you to get enough evidence to be able to be convictable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? That's a fantastic
Are you convictable?
That will be the name of this.
There you go.
There we go. And then I'm sure that will
be
drop. Chasing in the wind in the future. Convictableness. There we go.
Indeed.
Fantastic. Indeed. We're going to leave it right there. And we will we'll see you next time right here. Counterculture.
Grace and peace.